What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast. Thank you for joining us. My name is Eric. That's my co host, Will. And today we are going to be talking some rookie watch, a little bit of stock up, stock down on the rookie class so far through week one. Some guys that we saw, kind of perform better than expected, some guys that did the opposite, that performed worse, and just kind of giving you a better idea of how these guys performed, both for dynasty purposes and for redraft. So hopefully we can kind of cover both of those bases for you guys in this one. But real quickly, before we get into it, Will, you got anything to say to the people?
Absolutely. Just make sure you guys are subscribing, doing all that great YouTube stuff for the channel. We've noticed we have a lot of watch hours. Not a whole lot of people are subscribing. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know when we drop our latest videos, and hit that like button too. It's the best way to get our stuff out there. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it because this is some exciting stuff. Go ahead and talk about the young guys out here.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's lead this thing off with Zay Flowers, who had a really, really impressive debut. He actually led the NFL in target share in week one, not just rookie receivers, but all receivers at 45.5%, and also led the NFL in first read target share at 60%. There's a lot that we can talk about and we're going to get into, but Will, I want to know kind of your perspective and your thoughts on his performance in week one.
So taking a look at it, going into this week, all reports have been saying that he was the best receiver in camp. And at first, you think that that's sort of just them pumping up the rookie, making him feel good about himself. Until we get out here, and without Mark Andrews, they leaned on him heavily. So with Mark Andrews back, will he have this same volume with this 45.5% target share and 60% first read share? We can kind of expect that to go down, but at the same time, his usage was super encouraging that he got this involved this early, means they trust him. So, and the fact that the next closest wide receiver on the team was Odell with 3 targets, I think that's a pretty good indicator that they do trust Zay Jones more than at least the other receivers on the team.
Zay Flowers.
Oh, did I say Zay Jones? Sorry about that. Zay Flowers.
That's all good.
He looked really dynamic with the ball in his hands, which is what we expect from Zay Flowers. Is what he was drafted for. He's electric when he's out there in open field, so it was awesome to see him actually go out there and perform.
Yeah, 100%. And he backed up exactly what you're talking about with that open field dynamism, with 34 receiving yards after contact and 54 receiving yards after the catch. Both were first among all rookie receivers, so really impressive there. I don't know that we actually said his full stat line yet. He did have 11 touches, 10 targets, 9 receptions, and 78 yards. So yeah, just a fantastic debut. The only negative that I can really think of for what we saw from him was that it was a pretty low ADOT, only 2.6, which can be a cause for concern in terms of like gadgety, unsustainable usage. And that might be something worth considering with Mark Andrews out, like whether that type of manufactured touches is still going to be there when he comes back. But again, it's week one. I'm not going to get too concerned about it. And it's also worth noting as kind of a counterpoint that he accounted for 25.5% of all of the Ravens' air yards.
Absolutely. So definitely encouraging days ahead for Zay Flowers, for sure.
100%. And then probably the biggest mover on the entire list, at least according to Keep Trade Cut, is going to be Puka Nacua for the LA Rams. Had a fantastic debut. Funny enough, was second in the NFL in target share and first read target share, right behind Zay Flowers at 39.5% and 43% respectively. Did you see this coming from Puka?
Not at all. Not at all. It's like we said, neither of us were hitting the Van Jefferson button this week, but we thought that Tyler Higbee would be the one that benefited a lot from this, but it turned out Puka Nacua just absolutely filled out that Cooper Kupp role completely. And production-wise, you could kind of say that he was right there with him. I'm not going to say he was Cooper Kupp, but at the same time, he did a good job filling out the role and taking on that volume. 15 targets, 10 receptions, 119 yards is absolutely nothing to shake a stick at all.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's not something I was expecting out of him in his first week at all.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a guy that both of us, I think, were in on as a prospect. But, I mean, we're talking a 4th-round rookie pick in dynasty leagues, for the most part undrafted in probably most 12-team redraft leagues. I guess you get to 14-team leagues. I'm sure he was on a lot of people's rosters. But, yeah, incredible performance from him in week one. You mentioned the Cooper Kupp role, and like you said, production-wise, he did kind of fill that. But he was used very differently in terms of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
In week 1 last year, Cooper Kupp lined up in the slot over 50% of the time and out wide around 45% of the time, and was also used on screens around 20% of the time. Puka, on the other hand, was only used in the slot around 30%, out wide 70%, and very little screen usage at 7%. So he's really kind of that true outside, quote unquote, alpha receiver.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, profile wise. So when Cooper Cup comes back, right? Puka's going to take a hit somehow volume wise, but do you think it's going to be a big hit based upon the fact that they do use him on the outside a little bit more? You know what I mean? Obviously, he's going to take a hit, but how big of a hit or how solidified do you see his role in this offense being going forward? Seeing as they did see he's capable of at least handling this workload.
I think Sean McVay is too good of a coach to not put his best guys out there and put them in the best position to succeed. And right now, Puka's their best receiver. Obviously, Cooper Kupp comes back and that changes, but yeah, I don't think that pushes him off the field completely. You know, this is the rookie show, so we're not really talking about him. But Tutu Atwell also got more involved than I think we both thought.
Mm-hmm.
His role, I think, is probably more unique, and so I don't think his role will get hit as hard by Cooper Kupp returning. But still, Puka's, like you said, with the amount of times he was aligned on the outside, he's still going to get his, even when Cooper Kupp is back.
Nah, that makes a lot of sense. And taking a look at just dynasty stocks, stuff like that, pretty meteoric rise on keep trade cut. He was the wide receiver 187 back in May, the wide receiver 84 in July, the wide receiver 66 prior to the game this weekend, and now he's up to the wide receiver 37. So stocks have been shooting up for this guy, absolutely. And this puts him up
crazy.
This puts him above guys like Mike Evans, Hollywood Brown, and right below Keenan Allen and Deontay Johnson. So he's definitely rose himself to the ranks of those guys who are just the super volume guys, really. Some guys, very trusted names in fantasy.
So let's talk about that specifically, because that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
That's insanity. I like Puka. Like I said, we liked him as a prospect. So this isn't a scenario where it's a guy that we didn't believe in, and then he kind of had a super unexpected great performance.
Yeah, it's not a Jonathan Mingo week, you know.
Yeah. We didn't expect him to do nearly this well, but it's a little bit of confirmation that he's as good as we thought he was, or better. But does he belong with the names that are on the list that we just mentioned?
Not yet, not after 1 week. But yeah. I think that's going to inflate his price, which gets us into kind of the next point that you had written here with trade value for Puka, because I feel like trades are kind of flying all over the place. And you mentioned that you had seen some crazy ones on Twitter already.
Bro, I'm seeing people trading Drake London straight up for Puka Nacua. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Please do not do that. If you're thinking about that and you're watching this channel, please do not do that. I promise you that's a bad idea. But what's your comment on that? I don't know if you've heard that before.
Nah, I feel like I did see that and I thought it was fake. And now that you're telling me that is crazy. Just even in terms of overall value, that's not the best play in the world, because Drake London's going to have a 5-year contract. You know what I mean? Stuff like that does add up in Dynasty, and I don't know. But I think that if you can get an insane value out of Puka, do you go for it? Like, if you're on the Puka side, you get offered Drake London straight up. Do you take that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a smash.
101 days out of less days than that. Like, so, like every single time. That's crazy to me. I've seen some Deontay trades, which I think is slightly more reasonable, but I'm still on the Deontay side, where especially for contenders and stuff like that, with Deontay now set to miss 3 or 4 weeks potentially with this hamstring injury, and also just,
Kenny
after the
Pickett
performance that he put up last year, and Kenny Pickett, like people might be down on him. So if you could trade them 1 for 1 or Puka plus, a third, a fourth, whatever, for Deontay, I'm definitely in on that. But let's be a little bit more reasonable. Let's take it back down to earth here for a second. I do think that a mid 24 second is very attainable, and I think a lot of people would probably give that to you for Puka Nacua right now. considering we drafted him, or most of us probably drafted him as a 4th round rookie pick, to be able to turn that into a 2nd round rookie pick after 1 week seems like probably the logical, reasonable thing to do. But is that the prudent play, or is that selling too low?
I think that's selling too low. Because we kind of had a short discussion about it yesterday where I felt like Puka is
Yeah.
doing exactly right now what you would hope a 1st round or a 2nd round pick would be doing, as a 4th round pick. Actually,
Yeah.
Puka's kind of doing what you would hope a starter would be doing right now. So to trade him for a second
Yeah.
round rookie that you're hoping is going to end up panning out, you want to go for the guys who are actually doing it right now, and that's Puka right now. So unless we see something change dramatically, I would stick with Puka instead of trading him for a second.
Yeah. I have kind of split feelings on this because, like, draft capital is something that I think is really important,
Mm-hmm.
but it stays important even once you see production on the field. But it's especially important, in prospect eval and prior to them stepping foot on the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, in rookie draft season and even heading up to the season, a guy like Marvin Mims, who we talked about in our discussion, would have been valued well ahead of Puka Nacua. He got drafted in the 2nd round. He was the first draft pick for the Broncos in the Sean Payton era. Puka went much later. What was he, like a 5th
I think he was
round
a
pick
5th
or
round
something
pick,
like
but I'll
that?
double check.
Um, so going much later, and that's important. Like that impacts job security, longevity in the league. Your, like, even if you perform, especially at like the running back position, you see that all the time with guys that are day 3 picks that just get replaced, even if they performed valiantly. And it's kind of the same at the wide receiver position. So it's worth noting. But then you see Marvin Mims running behind Lil Jordan Humphrey and no names for the Broncos, and Puka Nacua is the star leading receiver for the Rams. Like, how much do those kind of balance out with each other?
I don't know, man. I do value all that, but one thing I really do value is actual NFL reps as well, because capital means a lot, but at the same time, Trey Lance is sitting on the bench. You know what I mean? He got
Yeah,
traded for a
yeah,
4th.
you make a good
So
point.
at the end of the day, you want the guys
That's
who are out
facts.
there actually performing in the NFL. Marvin Mims hasn't shown me he's going to perform yet, but he could at some point. But what are we banking on right here? If you're building for the future, maybe. But if you got a guy and you need someone that's performing right now, I would say stick with Puka. I think they value him at the spot that he's at. And I think like when it
Yeah,
comes to stuff like that too, with coaches like Sean McVay who are as good as they are, personnel isn't really as important. As we've seen with like Kyle Shanahan, where he had a 1st round pick in Trey Lance, but he's rolling with Mr. Irrelevant and Brock Purdy. It's just
yeah,
who works at the end of the day, you know?
true. Very true. All right, I know that we've been talking about Puka for a long time, but he's kind of the headliner of the show.
Yeah.
Real quickly before we leave the topic, where do you draw the line? Because we said a mid 24 first is probably too low for you, and I think it might be too low for me. I think at that price, I'm holding.
Mm-hmm.
Early second, like 204 or better.
Early second would be cool with me because that's where like this year the guys like Sam Laporta stuff like that went. I'd be cool with an early second because I feel like the
Yeah,
value hasn't really turned over as much. But once you get to the middle of the second, it gets a little dodgy. But at least beginning of the second, you still know you're going to be getting a quality player out of that, someone who's possibly a first
yeah,
round talent.
I'm on board with that as well. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad we're in agreement there. And of course, if you can get a first, do that shit in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
So, but shoot for the stars, y'all, because clearly the hype is getting outrageous. So send us in the comments or use the link in the Discord to hit us up with any trade offers that you get for or send out for Puka. We'd be very interested to see what you have.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to the next guy on the list, Mr. Electric, Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously, he played all the way back on Thursday night, so this was kind of a while ago now, and a lot of people have probably talked about it already. But like I said, looked electric on limited opportunity, led the NFL in missed tackles forced per attempt, and also just in general missed tackles forced on only 7 carries, which I thought was ridiculous. What did you think about his performance, and do you think that this signifies a role change going forward?
Um, I'm gonna answer that in a little bit in reverse because I feel like Dan
Okay.
Campbell he told us that he wanted him just to see some NFL gameplay, sort of ramp him up, this like that. But when they
Yeah.
put him out there to, see what NFL gameplay looks like, he was one of the best players out there on the field. So
Yeah.
I would expect anybody in there that's got a brain to play him a lot going forward because these numbers, they speak for themselves at the end of the day. The fact that he was able to go
Yeah.
out there his first game and be this electric, make this many, 6 missed tackles and 7 carries to lead the NFL is crazy. And that's
Yeah.
not something you just ignore
Yeah.
going into week 2, especially with David Montgomery being as inefficient as he was, just being the new Jamal Williams. I think that there's a lot of room for Jahmyr Gibbs to really take over this offense.
So, okay, that's an interesting discussion to get into because I think he's absolutely going to see an increased workload, and I think he for sure deserves it after what he put on tape last week. But based on what we've seen out of the Lions in years past and the way that they used Jamal Williams last year, didn't seem like they minded that Jamal Williams was incredibly inefficient, and I don't think that they're going to mind that David Montgomery is that inefficient.
That's true.
I think that they really like having that kind of two-down thumper, that kind of thunder and lightning type role between these two guys, kind of a little juxtaposition and change of pace between these guys. I also don't think that they want to put Jahmyr Gibbs too much in harm's way, just considering his weight, his size. I don't think they want to give him an excess of volume. So 100% agree. He's going to get more work. I especially hope he gets more work in the passing game. But I think Demon's here to stay, and I think he's going to continue to be a 15-plus touch guy every week.
I can see that too. I can 100% see that. The thing that I'm hoping for the most, I'm hoping that Jahmyr Gibbs is better at finishing plays than a lot of these Lions players have been. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously last year wasn't able to finish a whole lot of plays, was tackled a lot on the one.
Yeah.
Same would kind of go a little bit for DeAndre Swift. I feel like there were a lot of plays that he didn't finish, and Jamal Williams was sort of a beneficiary of that. So
Right.
I think that Demont, like you said, he's going to be out there on the field. He's going to touch the ball a lot. But in terms of scoring and stuff like that, I'm really hoping Jahmyr Gibbs can make something happen with, as electric as he is, being able to finish plays, having the burst that he had that we saw last week. I don't know. I think the sky could be the limit, depending on how this team. It really depends on how this team is ran. Really, if they're a red zone team, if they're getting into the red zone consistently and they're doing that, David Montgomery's going to eat. But if they're able to make those splash plays happen more often and be a more dynamic offense and pick up the pace, which we haven't seen yet, Jahmyr Gibbs has a lot of room to elevate this offense, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and from a scoring perspective, which you mentioned, Jahmyr Gibbs did get a red zone carry on Thursday night and would have housed it if he hadn't kind of tripped over his own feet. He exploded on a nice cutback move to the outside and had green grass, but like I said, he just fell over. So yeah, that would have changed the outlook on him going forward, I think, a lot had he found his way into the end zone there. Also, most of this discussion in terms of value is from a redraft perspective. From a dynasty perspective, nobody's selling this guy, and nobody should. There's no worry about his low volume in week 1. He's going to be a stud. He's probably the dynasty, RB3?
Probably at this point.
Behind Bijan and Brees?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there?
Yeah, he's up there in the mix.
Yeah. But yeah, from a redraft perspective, do you think that there's any more opportunity? I feel like he's not like a buy low, but like in Dynasty, you have to buy high.
Mm-hmm.
In redraft, do you think there's an opportunity to kind of buy at market value or just slightly below kind of the draft value where he was taken in that early to mid third round?
Honestly, unless you're playing in a league with people who, it's weird to say, people who are more realistic or even people like us, I think there's room to find a trade that could be fair for Jahmyr Gibbs. But in a lot of home leagues and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to find a trade for Jahmyr Gibbs. I think people are just too excited about this guy. The name value is too high at this point, and everyone's talking about him on Twitter. I think it's going to be tough to try to trade for him at this point now.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. But yeah, arrow pointing up for Jahmyr Gibbs. Another guy that the arrow is pointing way up on, I'm so excited after what we saw from week 1, is Anthony Richardson. Bro, 37 pass attempts in his first game? Are you joking?
Bro,
this is insanity.
When I'm telling you, I was expecting this number to be like 20, maybe. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I was not expecting 37
I was expecting Desmond Ridder numbers, 18 pass attempts. He doubled that. More than doubled that.
Yeah.
Bro, and not only did they have the high pass attempts, but also the Colts were fifth in the league in neutral pass rate and first in neutral pace. And what that means, if you're unfamiliar, neutral game script basically just meaning that the game isn't out of hand in one way or the other. The team isn't leading by a ton or down by a ton. So neutral game script. They're passing the fifth most in the league, and they're the first fastest team in terms of the amount of plays run in the entire NFL. Bro,
Kind of love to see
things
it.
could not be better
Yeah.
for Anthony Richardson. That situation is immaculate.
Absolutely, and even in terms of his passing, it wasn't always perfect, but he looked pretty good out there. Especially like he was able to make things happen with Michael Pittman, someone I wasn't expecting to do very well week one, was able to eat.
Yeah.
So he is able to actually support other players in fantasy as well, along with himself. From what we've seen, at least, Shane Steichen's been able to draw up this offense in a way that, it's been effective, and he's also gotten some design runs as well because he's just a fucking tank of a man. He's a monster of a man.
Beast.
You want to see him, with that being said, you want to see him be a little bit more careful when he runs just for longevity purposes, but
Yeah.
he's fun as hell to watch play because he is going to go out there and he's going to perform. So it's just, we want to see him show more growth as a passer, but the fact that he has shown as much as he has already, bright days are ahead.
I'm blown away. I'm blown away. He looked poised. He looked comfortable. He definitely looks like he belongs as an NFL quarterback. I think the area that people were most concerned about in terms of his short to intermediate accuracy looked really strong. Like you said, there's going to be ups and downs. It wasn't perfect all the way through, but no person on the planet expected it to be perfect. I think it was much better than I even thought it was going to be, and I've been high on him the whole process. Like you mentioned, the design runs are great. But yeah, for Dynasty, he's untouchable at this point, unless you're gonna way overpay. Like I think people are gonna be way too far in on him. Um, but if there's anybody out there that's not 100% sold in redraft, I think he's gonna be a fantasy stud off the rip. And then from the Dynasty perspective as well, the growth that we've seen from him as a passer this early gives me even more confidence about his longevity in the league.
I absolutely agree 100%. I'm super excited for Anthony Richardson going forward. And he looked like the best rookie quarterback out there this weekend, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Even as a passer, like I think Bryce Young probably struggled more than him in week one. It was crazy to see.
Yeah, so
Um,
and CJ Stroud, not bad, but Anthony Richardson definitely looked better out there. Looked more poised, but also, kind of with a better team than the Texans as well, not fighting
Yeah.
for his life out there. So it stands to be seen.
CJ Stroud performed valiantly
Yeah.
against the Baltimore defense. I'll give him that.
He did the most he really could, I feel like,
Yeah.
Taking a look at the next one, I'm actually going to throw to this one because this is my boy down here. We got Mr.
boy.
Sammy fucking Football, baby. Sam Laporta.
Sammy ball game. Come on. Let's go, bro.
Dog, I'm so excited to see this man out here. Most receptions for a rookie tight end in week one since, ironically, TJ Hawkinson back in 2019. Already has more career yak than TJ Hawkinson too. Want to go ahead and just say that? But he led all rookie tight ends in snap share this weekend at 83%. Also, that was a joke, by the way, not a real thing. And 72% route participation and 19% targets per route ran, which is super encouraging numbers for Laporta out the gate. Those are actually like tight end one metrics for a rookie almost immediately out the gate. Not a ton of yak, which is really his calling card. He's known for like being a running back after the catch. But that's going to change. And I'm really hopeful for that changing, especially going into this week with Seattle. The team that lets up a lot of points against the tight end. This may be a huge week for Sam Laporta. If you're seeing this early before we do our start sits, just letting you know that's in there. But yeah,
Segway King.
yeah, I'm super excited about Sam Laporta. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't have a ton else to add. I'm also incredibly encouraged by what we saw from him week one. I expect his role to increase going into week two. Until Jamison Williams gets back, and even once he does, like who else is this team going to throw the ball to? I expected a higher target share for Jahmyr Gibbs, and that wasn't the case, and so that kind of went into Laporta's lap. It was a weird way to say it, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, very excited, encouraged to see what he's going to do going forward, and especially what you mentioned about the yak. That is his strong suit, and that's only going to get better as the weeks go on.
Absolutely. It's so exciting, man. So exciting.
Yeah. And then another rookie tight end with a really impressive debut, Luke Musgrave, a guy that if you followed us during the offseason for our dynasty coverage and stuff like that, prospect analysis, Will, you were definitely higher on him than me. I wasn't as much of a believer, but he's shown us throughout the entirety of camp and preseason that he's earned an incredible role on this team. He's a full-time starter, and he showed that in week one as well. From Dynasty IM on Twitter, I thought this was incredibly impressive. Musgrave posted a 14.8% target share and an ADOT of 18. The only tight ends to post those numbers last year were Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, and Greg Dulcich. So incredibly impressive company to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Luke Musgrave, he was somebody I was looking into, like you said, and the draft capital was there as well, along with the fact that he was as big in the preseason as he was and in training camp. I think he's just primed for a good, big season, honestly. People have been stupid, but beat reporters out in Green Bay have been comparing him to a Travis Kelce of sorts for the team. I don't think he's ever going to reach that ceiling, but it's encouraging to see that he is being used. Again, another rookie tight end, seeing tight end one usage in terms of, like you said, those underlying metrics. And a lot of those things you're hoping to see turn into touchdowns because he had two opportunities that he could have scored on this past weekend as well that he did not.
Yeah.
One due to himself, one due to an overthrow. So you're just hoping that that'll meet somewhere in the middle. But Luke Musgrave definitely impressed me week one.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to mention. It absolutely could have been a monster week for him. One overthrow, like you mentioned, from Jordan Love, and then one where, again, similar to Jahmyr Gibbs, kind of tripped over his own feet. Too excited to probably get in the end zone.
Yeah.
But yeah, big things coming for Luke Musgrave. And then a couple names here that we can kind of run through a little bit quicker. Tank Bigsby is really the only guy, I guess maybe not the only guy, there's a couple, but one of the few guys on the list that's really trending down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a huge downgrade. I think, he'll improve, but a rough kind of debut performance for him. He did get to see both of the Jags carries inside the 5-yard line, which was something that you had kind of anticipated, him being the goal line back, not Travis Etienne. That came to fruition, and he did score on one of them, but outside of that, he really struggled. He went 7 for 13 on the ground, dropped a pass on his only target that led to an interception, and also had a fumble in this game.
Yeah, and this one actually does have me a little bit nervous because with the Travis Etienne situation, one of the things I brought up a lot in this preseason, because Tank Bigsby was having some fumble issues, Travis Etienne also had fumble issues last year. The biggest difference is Travis Etienne did not have, and for lack of better words, he didn't have another Travis Etienne in front of him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He had a James Robinson that was coming off of an Achilles injury that was obviously not his old self. So there really wasn't much competition in the way of, all right, you can kind of sit back. We got another guy who can handle this while you get it together.
Right.
Tank Bigsby does have a Travis Etienne in front of him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's not so much in the doghouse, but the team takes a step back to be like, all right, let's make sure you're ready before you get out here. We'll let Travis handle it, which he did this past weekend, and he showed that he could. So it's tough for Tank Bigsby going forward. I'm not saying that, sell Tank Bigsby or get rid of him. He's probably a stash, and he's someone to look forward to more towards the middle section, towards the end of the season maybe. But right now, I think there's going to be a little bit of time just because of the struggles he did see in week one.
Yeah, one thing I do want to ask you is I feel like with in redraft leagues, with the amount of important and productive names that there were on the waiver wire this week, I think we could see Tank Bigsby be dropped in a fair amount of leagues. Obviously, it's going to depend on depth and league size and settings and all sorts of stuff. But do you think that he's worth a pickup, or is he somebody that you're kind of just keeping an eye on for later down the road?
He's one of those guys I would keep an eye on and try to add in a later week. Because we don't know how the week 2 outlook is really going to look like. They're playing against, who are they playing this week? I'm sorry. I'm out here folding.
You're good.
They are playing against
Kansas City.
Yeah, they're playing against Kansas City, who they were pretty decent against the run last week. But I don't know. Maybe this week is a better week for Tank. Maybe he can see some more some more success. But I don't know. I really don't. In a game where I feel like they're going to be passing the ball a lot because Kansas City hopefully should be getting it together this week. I don't know how much of a role he really has because Travis Etienne was the primary pass catching back for sure in this backfield. So it's tough.
Yeah. he he's not a priority
Yeah,
at this point in time. Yeah,
absolutely.
agreed. All right, and then the last three guys on the list here, Roshan Johnson had a pretty impressive debut. Khalil Herbert was the RB1 there, but the game got out of hand very quickly for the Bears, and Roshan was the third down back, the pass catching back, and looked really good even in his carries as well. What did you think of his debut performance?
Yeah, I think out of all the running backs out there, I think he looked like the best one. It's not like he blew the competition out. Like Khalil Herbert was still there and he did okay. But I feel like Roshan Johnson actually did look like the best running back out there. Obviously, he scored the only touchdown out of all the running backs out there, but he got 7 targets in the season opener, which, like you said, the game got out of
Huge.
hand, but this is also the Bears. I kind of expect a lot of
Yeah.
games to get out of hand. And if he's getting
Yeah.
7 targets in the season opener, I think that's a great indicator going forward. And I don't really think that's something the front office can ignore for a long time, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. Arrows pointing up for Roshan, and I think even in games where it doesn't get quite as crazy in terms of game script, he
Hmm.
could see his role increase as the weeks go on.
Absolutely.
And then the last two guys here, sorry,
No, you're good.
just to mention real quickly, Trey Palmer, kind of a guy that was under the radar, fourth round rookie pick, maybe undrafted in a lot of leagues. Really showed in camp and in the preseason that he earned a role. He seemed like he came into the season as the wide receiver 3 and backed that up with a touchdown catch and some early involvement in week 1. Encouraging to see, but any, I don't know. What do you expect his role to look like going forward?
He's the third wide receiver on this team for sure, behind Godwin and Evans. So unless one of them goes down, the touchdown's just kind of fluky. It was just something that kind
Yeah.
of happened because 2 catches for 8 yards on 3 targets. Like you said, it's involvement, but it's not really what you want to see out of somebody. It's not someone you want to start for sure.
Yeah.
So I would keep an eye on it, but especially if one of them goes down and Godwin or Evans, I think Trey Palmer would be worth an ad at that point for sure.
Yeah. For sure, and good point in terms of like where he's at in the pecking order. They played the Vikings this week. Terrible defense. That's probably one of the better performances that you're going to see from Baker and this wide receiver group in general.
Hmm.
So yeah, probably not going to be able to sustain 3 wide receivers each and every week. And then the last guy that we have on the list is Devin Achane. Unfortunately, a healthy scratch in week 1 after being cleared to play. He was healthy. Didn't see a ton of run from any of the running backs. Raheem Mostert was by far and away the clear one, but I think he only got 10 carries. It was the Tua and the Tyreek show. Do you think we see Devin Achane actually be activated and have any involvement in the near future?
I think he's going to get activated probably this week, but I don't know how much his usage is going to be or how they're going to use him. I would hope that, he gets out there and maybe he has more of a passing down role or maybe more of a pass catching role. Because it looks like they
Yeah.
really do want to throw the ball, like you said, out there in Miami because they didn't run the ball much at all. It was kind of encouraging to see that Raheem Mostert only got 10 carries because it's not like, oh man, they're leaning on him 25 touches a game. He's definitely the guy. It's like there's a lot of room still for Devin Achane to get it together and kind of make himself a viable piece of this offense.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely room to, well, of course, there's room to improve after a healthy scratch, but I do think that things are going to be moving in the right direction for Devin Achane. Also, like you mentioned, Raheem Mostert wasn't very efficient with his touches either. Not that that's going to demote him immediately, but yeah, there's room for Devin Achane to kind of carve out a role here. But yeah, I think that will do it. Obviously, there were a ton of other rookies that played this weekend, but if you're interested in talking to us, discussing those with us, hit us up in the comments. We will answer all your questions, comments, whatever the case may be. Also, you can check the link in the description for our Discord if you want to have an even deeper conversation with us and also the rest of the community that we've built up over there. We got a bunch of smart fantasy minds in the Discord, so you can chat it up with them as well. And like Will mentioned at the top of the show, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, all that good YouTube stuff. It helps us out a ton as we are trying to grow as a channel, so that would be very much appreciated. But Will, do you have anything else for the people before we head out?
Yeah, make sure you guys check out those links down in the description below to all of our sponsors over at Dynasty Owner, our partners over at the League Winners with a lot of other content creators, stuff like that. They make articles, videos. But as a part of that, we're also sponsored by Sleeper. So make sure you use our promo code FFLW for all your DFS needs, stuff like that. And also check out our other sponsor, Do Numbers, for 15% off of merchandise. clothing, stuff like that. So if you're interested, check out the links below. Also, there's a link to our Discord if you want to join that community. But with that being said, I think that's all we really got for the people. So if you guys made it this far into the video, as always, we love you. And we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.